Howl of the Wild is now starting to get to the subscribers, which means I'm really behind on this video. So I'm trying to get this out, and I didn't want to do something halfway, so I decided on a theme, and that is book reviewing for the Wrestler type of playstyle. Not just the Wrestler archetype, but the whole grappling playstyle. Because the last time I reviewed a bunch of stuff with how it relates to Wrestler, a bunch of people were like, but actually, there's a grapple build for this that didn't involve Wrestler. But it's just anything for the unarmed grappler playstyle, because this is a book where a lot of Ancestries are showing unarmed strikes. There are a lot of new styles of gameplay represented here. And I want to look into how are they from a utility, martial-y perspective. And that's my goal here. I will be mostly rating things for how optimal choices are, but do not disparage anyone at your table for picking bad options. As long as their character functions and they're having fun, it's fine. It doesn't matter if they're leaving like 10% character power on the table. That's just how these things go. Let people play the game. Okay? Now, with that out of the way, let's get right into it. So, I'm going to be using a rating scale of tiers of 0 to 5. Tier 0 means it is a balance concern where it pushes out normal builds from the game and creates a bunch of issues. Tier 5 is I cannot invent a scenario where you would really want to play this. So, let's start the Anthamaru. Also, butchering every pronunciation in this book. That's how it's going to go. They're fish people. They have pretty damn good attribute boosts for grappling type playstyles. Strength and wisdom. Wisdom can give you like the medicine stuff that you want. Int as a flaw never really matters. So, very good from like stats alone. Speed is a little bit lower, but you have a swim speed. And you can breathe water and air, so that's good from the traits. And for their heritages, you can get comfortable medium armor, which is a nice little bonus if you're in a more exploratory game. You can become a large creature, which is a thing added to this book. And I'm just going to take a little side note here. I do not think that being large is really upside or downside for a grappler build. It lets you threaten more tiles of space, so it might be better with reach weapons. And it gives you like a +2 on stuff like Whirling Throw. But it also makes it hard if you navigate tighter corners, so there's upsides and downsides. I think it's pretty well balanced as it's implemented now. Time may show that, oh, actually it's too weak, or oh, actually it's too strong, but I have a feeling that'll differ from table to table, game to game. And I think that's a good spot for most stuff in Pathfinder. And Kaleidoscopic doesn't really do a whole lot. Dazzle Seeker requires a creature attempt to flat check target you due to being concealed, which doesn't necessarily happen that often. And then you just give them a misfortune on that dazzle check. And I'm just going to take a quick pause here and do some math. Alright, I have now done that math. It gives you a 36% chance to have them miss you due to the dazzled, compared to the natural 20%. So it is an improvement, but unless you're in a party that likes to throw out spells like Revealing Light, it's not going to be that great. If you are in that scenario, probably going to be pretty good. And that is another way for you to mitigate damage, which is nice. And if you don't have a reaction naturally, which there's builds that would make that work and make that good, but it's not a general take option, which is why I put the line through it. And you can also get some unarmed strike damage, which great if you want to build a wrestler. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but they don't have any like exciting wrestler feats beyond their initial class chassis. They have other cool stuff, but nothing that really made me go, wow, that's cool. So I'm going to put them in tier 3. They're kind of an average choice. They're very front-loaded in terms of their power. And if you're an aquatic-based game, I would say this is an excellent choice. And then there's the Awakened Animal. This one is really hard to evaluate, by the way, because everything about it varies depending on what animal you pick. Because it can vary the amount of HP you're getting. It can vary your size. It varies your speed. It gives you Constitution Wisdom, and then you can use that free to boost Strength, so good in that way. Again, attribute flaw int won't really matter. And then you get only common as a language. And then con plus int, which is, I want to say lower than every other ancestor we've seen, but I haven't read every single thing to double check this is new and such. But interesting. And then this is simply the stuff that allows an animal to function as a player character. You can read how those abilities exactly work. I'm not going to go through every line. And when you're picking an animal, you also get to pick an unarmed strike that, cool, there are better unarmed strikes that you have access to. And they really start to become good when you look at their different types of animals you can pick. You can get a climb speed, you can get leaps, and then eventually get into feats that let you fly. You can get into things that have faster land speed, so you can have the 30-foot speed, high HP, really nice stuff. You can do swimming stuff. It's all great. There's a lot of good options. You get other animal attacks. You have feats that benefit from you grabbing people. Although this one is... I'm not sure how often you'll actually use Fierce Grasp, because they're just getting the penalty to escape and +1 bonus to AC with... Like, it's a way for you to avoid using a shield as a wrestler, which is good. I'm just not overly excited by it, because I find that enemies rarely try to escape from a grapple anyway. And it does give that +1 against being hit. I'm just not sure, because I think I'd rather have the shield, for that way even if my grab misses, I can still do the defensive action. But this is definitely a great option. Wild Stride again has benefits for these unarmed builds that want to have the free hand. You just get to move quickly. And movement is actually a big deal for wrestlers, because all your stuff is melee range only. And stuff like this, these Wild Stride, these extra movement abilities, are going to be extra good when Starfinder comes around. Because in Starfinder, they're going to be focused on a ranged first metagame. And because ranged is going to be highly prioritized, being able to grapple people to make their ranged attacks have a chance to fail, make their spells have a chance to fail. Forts are likely going to be lower, because a lot of things are going to be on the sniper type perspective. They're going to be weaving in and out of melee. So I think that grapplers that have strong movement speed will actually be much better in Starfinder, even if that's kind of against the theme. So I'm going to make extra note of, when I mention a movement ability, think, okay, if my GM is letting me crossplay Pathfinder with Starfinder, this is something that will be good for my melee characters. And then of course they have like some very cool high level feats too, which lets you even stride 3 times with the Wild Stride. And you can do Masqueteer and other neat stuff, but many exciting options. Can be large, great stat boost, have Serenity with grabs and unarmed styles, many unarmed attacks, and I'm putting it tier 1.5. And the reason is, I think Lizard Folk kinda eats its lunch, because Lizard Folk can also get a free Ghost Touch rune, but doesn't have the same movement options. Lizard Folk's unarmed strike damage is also a little bit higher. So I'm going to say it's a little bit below Lizard Folk, but it's very nice. And I still think that it is an exciting addition to the game, and I'm happy it's here. Now we have the Centaurs. And I heard that the designers had a big debate of if they should have rounded or pointy ears. Rounded ears won, so cool. That's the end of that sentence. Again, size large, great attribute boost. You're going to hear me say that a lot, because turns out a book that's focused on primal stuff has a lot of ancestries that are good for strength. So you go ahead and look at the base class chassis. Seems pretty solid. Has dark vision. I don't know why, but it does. It has dark vision. You can let PCs ride you and do funny ha-has with that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you can do it. And it does have various heritages that can boost the power of wrestling type stuff. because you can actually have, from Heritage and your base Ancestry, a movement speed of 35, which is great. And this stacks with Fleet, this stacks with Monk's extra move speed, this stacks just about everything. You just get to go fast. I will note that you're probably not going to play a Centaur in a Starfinder game just because that is too off theme, but I could see a sentient bear person being in a Starfinder game. I can't really say the same for a Centaur, because they're, in my mind, too tied to fantasy. But this is, again, the type of stuff you want to look for in a Starfinder Wrestler Ancestry. And you can then also get the Iron Hoof Centaur, which gives you Finesse, not Agile, because they specifically errated this so that you can't have a D8 Agile strike without needing a stance. Because there is a feat that buffs this later, but still can have an unarmed strike that's better than a basic fist. You can become medium creature if you really want, which, again, I think the medium versus large thing is kind of a wash. Or you can also just, like, have more HP, which is pretty good. So, you can also get +1 to athletics checks to shove. And, that's pretty decent. I don't shove very often, but, you know, it's a thing that boosts an athletics maneuver. You can have hard-hitting unarmed strike, which, sure. You can actually make the mount thing playable with the level 5 feat. But I think that where they really shine is the feats they start getting around level 9. Cause like, or Proud Mentor as well. There's a level 5 feat that basically just gives you temp HP whenever you aid. And if you're a class that does not naturally have a strong reaction, you can easily aid using athletics by saying, I moved the ally into their strike, so therefore I am aiding. And then doing so, you just get more HP, which is really nice if you're in the front all the time. So, you get that. I think Fierce Competitor is actually, like, one of the strongest wrestling abilities we have seen in any Ancestry. And I do not mean that to be hyperbolic. You basically say, hey, my ally, I'm going to give us both a +2 to try and either trip or grapple that guy specifically. And then, if you succeed, you then get to +2 intimidation checks for an hour, which isn't really why you're doing it. You're doing it because you get a +2 circumstance bonus for 1 minute until somebody succeeds at doing that. And if the thing is, hey, that guy there, let's trip him, you're gonna get that guy tripped. And that is gonna put you in a big winning spot. Yeah, it's a once per day ability, but if there is a boss fight type scenario, this lets you get off on the right foot. Because, in theory, if you are a champion Centaur or a War Priest Cleric Centaur, you could use Athletic Rush. Give yourself a +2 status bonus while striding over there with a 45 move speed or something. Then you go in and you trip them with a +4 above your normal athletics bonus. Like, if you put down grapple, you have a good chance of restraining. If you put down disarm, you have a good chance of crit succeeding getting rid of their weapon. This is a powerful ability. And then, yeah, it gives you bonus to intimidation checks. Not why I'm taking it, though. And then, of course, you can get the ability to do Heroism and give somebody temporary HP, which is fine. It's a notable ability. It's just like, I don't think it's that extraordinary. You can then, of course, get more mobility and the ability to Breath of Life once per day, which is also really good. Oh, and you can also have the monster ability Trample, which will do your hoof damage. And that could be, therefore, a D8 that you just use as, like, an area of effect ability. So, you can have area damage as this Ancestry. If you're an Ancestry Paragon, this one has so many good choices. It is perfect for an Ancestry Paragon game. You are not starved for good options here. So you got a ton of options for supporting. Has a feat to give +2 a grapple or trip once per day. You're fast. you're big, you have a good amount of HP, you have a damaging unarmed strike. It's a tier 1 wrestling ancestry. This is what a tier 1 ancestry for wrestling looks like. And it's not that much better than Lizard Folk. It's not that much better than the Colo, aka Knowles. It's just really good at what it does. It doesn't have the same, like, physical damage output that the other tier 1 wrestler ancestries do. But oh man, does it have the other support utility to make up for it. And again, I kind of use Lizard Folk as my gold standard wrestler ancestry for a class that doesn't have unarmed strikes granted. I like Centaur a lot. And then the Merfolk, this one's going to be fast. So anyway, they are an uncommon ancestry, 8 HP. They have a land speed of 5 feet, so you're going to need to get an aquamarine chair if you want to be on land. They have a flaw in constitution, and they don't have a natural bonus in strength, so that's, again, not going to be too great for them in wrestling. They have low light vision, they need to be in water frequently. There is one that can give you a bonus to jumping, in terms of a heritage, but yeah. You can also go ahead and get dark vision and immunity to ocean pressure, which, fine. Or you could smell blood and water, which is also fine. This is very much, I'm playing an aquatic game, and that's why you'd pick this. They do have one notable ability, which is Healing Flesh, which lets you really be good at treating wounds if you decide to use your own blood for it. And it also lets somebody consume your heart and liver to then become not aging for 8 years, which, that's an ability that exists. So yeah, I don't think they're that great for wrestling. It does have use in an aquatic game. I still wouldn't build them as a wrestler. I'd put them in tier 4 as wrestler. I'd say going for a heritage without any direct synergy would be better than this one, because there's some anti-synergy, particularly if you go back to the start and you look at their attribute boosts. So yeah. Then you have the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs were one a lot of people were very excited for. And I'd say generally their design philosophy is, let's make a large creature that can be played, and that then has feats that remove a lot of the downsides of being a large creature. So it has a lot of feats to mitigate downsides of being large. And it's an uncommon, 10 HP per level, standard move speed, strength con free with the flaw and charisma, pretty damn good stat boost. Languages are pretty decent. Dark vision, horns. You can also be, in terms of heritages, a little horn minotaur, which gives you agile unarmed horn strikes, which are pretty neat. You can also take the slab soul, which once per day you can just bonk with a massive stone pillar, I guess. And you can just go ahead and deal some damage with a reflex save that way, which is interesting. And then there's one that lets you be really good at stealth, which is actually going to be relevant later on. But again, baseline with Minotaur, you're getting a D8 unarmed strike, which is pretty good. And you can take feats like Friendly Nudge, which lets you shove allies around without needing a free hand, so you can get people out of the way. And you can also, if the ally is willing, treat the result as degrees of success higher. So you can go ahead, nudge them, and then potentially step after them and have everybody kind of shift along, which interesting. Alarming Disappearance, which is one of my favorite feats in the game. It just makes people frightened when you successfully hide from them the first time. Because like, where the hell did that guy go? Which is really funny. And if you have characters in your party that can spread conditions like Dazzled, you can then hide pretty easily. Which is funny, again. You can also just like have really good carry capacities and rest while wearing medium armor, which is good if you're in a game where night ambushes are a thing. You can also do stuff like Friendly Fling here, where you help allies just get to the spot they need to go. You could have Goring Charge, which lets you just, like, stride and make strikes. Again, you can help allies move around the battlefield. There's a lot of moving your allies around in Minotaur, which is interesting. And Threatening Pursuit lets you just, like, get an area effect demoralized, which is, again, pretty good. Reminder, this does have a charisma flaw, but you can still get a pretty decent intimidation. And you can also then get Funny Stampede ability, where you can then have a bunch of allies go run up, and everybody just gets into the fight early on. Or you can straight up lock somebody away in a Quandary spell as an Ancestry feat. This is one of the most powerful spells in the game. You just no save, tell a creature, bye-bye, give us some prep time. This can let you turn a fight that would be an above-level creature plus some minions into 2 separate fights, which gives you a lot of time to set up buffs, a lot of time to then do whatever you want. And so in terms of buying space, that's probably one of the strongest Ancestry feats in the entire game. And I will note that one of the characters on my to-do list is now one of those medium Minotaurs, because with the Little Horn Minotaur, you can sneak attack using the Agile Horn, so you can go ahead and do all the fun skill stuff they have with, like, the rogue skill progression, and have all the wrestler stuff, and it's probably going to be a great time. So, they have a strong unarmed strike, good feat support, good mix between damage and utility. I'd say they're tier 1.5-ish. They don't have a lot of exceptional feats in, like, the mid-game. They have really exceptional feats late game and are very strong base chassis. And yeah. Then you got the Surki. They're basically a magic-consuming ancestry, and they are really complex. So they have this Magiphage note, which basically determines the tradition of all of your abilities. And then you get to pick heritages. And then you can keep on picking more by taking a feat later on. So now into their heritages, you can get one that gives you claws that then are agile and have slashing with versatile bludgeoning, which are 2 of the most desired damage types, because that way you can hit skeletons and hit zombies well. And then you can evolve them later on, and evolution's like level 5 feat. They then pick an evolution, and you can then get Hard Shell, which again gives you the ability to sleep in armor, and then you can get Flight and less fall damage. You can get Lights, and you can get more different heritages. It doesn't have synergy with Wrestler, but it has a lot of very interesting stuff. I'm gonna put it as average in terms of Wrestlers because it's just a good ancestry that you can happen to wrestle with because it's a medium creature. Yeah. And now, when I come back, we'll be doing subclasses. And now we're going to the subclasses, or other feats that exist outside of the Ancestries, because the Ancestries were a book of what I want to talk about, but that's not all this book brought. Because it brought a lot of feats for the Druid and Barbarian subclasses that let them change form. So this is for the Untamed Druid and the Animal Instinct Barbarians. And so they have a lot of feats that are shared between them now. So you can see these 2 up here as examples, where Brutal Crush is like, I would say, take on a combat grab style ability where you apply a debuff, but you need it to be like a second attack on a turn. This actually requires your first action to be a strike that hits, which makes it a bit more situational. But it is a strike plus in Barbarian and Druid, who normally don't have those types of abilities. Because a lot of the Barbarian or Druid feats are not related to strike actions. So it's really interesting to see a lot of things that are about strikes. And Rip and Tear is just like a bit of extra damage. There are a lot of these little bit of extra damage feats here. I don't think any of them are particularly good because needing to have dealt damage and then needing to hit a second follow-up strike seems a little specific. Because at least with Combat Grab, you can trip with that first action. You can whiff that first attack and still do the Combat Grab. So, I would say these are weaker than Combat Grab, and they are level 4 feats. It's not going to replace Wrestler as a thing for these classes to take, basically. The Druid also specifically gets some reactions as they enter their new forms, which either help their tankiness or give them a little bit of extra utility. So, it's just whatever you feel like doing. And I think these are solid abilities. Druids don't normally have great reactions. So these are good choices. This lets a Druid dismiss their form to take less damage, which is pretty cool. So I definitely think this will allow Druids to play more aggressively in boss fights for the Untamed Druids. Because this will let them go up there, go for the trip, go for the grapple, do their thing, and when they get crit, they can downgrade to normal hit, and then move backwards and transition to a healer for the second half of the fight. Because I think that a lot of the Untamed Druid awkwardness comes from it's 2 actions to get into your martial-y thing, and that makes it pretty slow a lot of the time. This makes it so that way it's worth doing that in a boss fight, doing your thing for a little bit, and then retreating to the backline, playing a normal caster game from that point forward. Where in a normal fight, you'd kind of want to make sure everything's good with your castery stuff, throw out your AoE, then run in with the animal form. So, it gives another layer of complexity to that game flow, which I really like. You can also explode as you transform, which, cool. Good job, Druids, you did it. You got more area damage on your area damage spellcaster. Personally, I just cast Chain Lightning, but I'm built different, so... no, legitimately, this is probably pretty good, but needing to already be in melee, and then spending actions to transform, and then not doing something like raising a shield or trying to get out of that situation is maybe making this a little bit more specific than it otherwise would be, but I would say the damage is there, because 1d6 per spell rank for a single action is on rate for like fireball action economy efficiency. And this doesn't require any extra slots beyond what you would already be doing. But most time if I'm shapeshifting, I want to shapeshift and then immediately make a strike. So this doesn't let you do that. I could see a scenario where this is useful. I'm not convinced it is useful every time, is my concern. Then again, more stuff to just like be benefits of reaction of when you transform, which is cool. That's it. Then Rangers got a lot of focus spells. You can see their non-focus spell stuff on the right, and it does mention Animal Feature as a Warden spell for one of these feats, so I put the Animal Feature spell up on screen as well. You can go ahead and read these. A lot of these have to do with Animal Companions and doing a spellcasting type Ranger with Animal Companions, which is a playstyle that is being pushed in this book. I think it's a very valid playstyle, but I also think that you're really going to want a feat from Beastmaster to do it really well, and I'll show that later. Because the Ranger Animal Companions do scale at a slower rate, meaning you're going to be getting your upgrade Animal Companion at level 6, exactly when it's starting to compete with these other abilities here. So I'm not that big of a fan of the non-focus spell feats in Ranger. But it does have some really fun focus spells. Like this Threatening Mimicry. 10-foot emanation around yourself, you can apply Area Frightened. That's pretty good for a focus spell. Like, and it also has a condition for if people target you, the frightened value doesn't go down. Like, that's really, really good. So, you can do this to be a debuff, and then command an Animal Companion to run in, do the thing. And if you have the feat, Natural Conduit, you could even, like, spend 3 actions to cast a spell from your animal companion if your animal companion is mature at this point, which you can do via Beastmaster or through your own ranger stuff starting at level 6. You can then have the companion use an action to position itself well as a large creature to cover more tiles, and then have Threatening Mimicry come from that creature, and you can frighten the front line like that as a bow ranger or something. There's some interesting stuff here. This is an interesting ability. I'm not going to claim it is great, but I'm going to claim it is interesting. And I'm going to claim Packbreaker is actually pretty damn good. It is only 1 creature, and it is a higher rank focus spell. But I should mention that this is a creature that then doesn't treat anything as its ally. So if there is an enemy supporting creature, because I know that in like Book of the Dead and stuff, there are a lot of undead that could do things like cast harm for other undeads. If you're going into an area where people rely on flanking, this can really disrupt those types of things. So if there are support abilities that affect only allies, this hinders that. But really what you're doing this for is the Confused with no incapacitation. So you can confuse a boss and have them start attacking their own guys on their side of the field. If you're in like a larger party situation, so your GM puts a boss around some mooks, I can see this being very useful. And I think a lot of the new focus spells are kind of on this type of power level, where it gives you a situational ability that can be pretty damn good in that situation. And Pulverizing Wake lets you hit something, deal some extra damage, and then also create a cone. Mind you, that cone will not include the actual target of your strike, because you originate from the side of a blah 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 blah, but it still gives you a little bit of area damage and some extra damage on a strike. So I think that there is room for like a precision style ranger that makes a few strikes a turn, or only 1 or 2 strikes a turn, and fills the rest out with these types of focus spells. I think that is now a build that can exist. I'm not convinced that'll be the best way to play Ranger, but it definitely differentiates it more from Fighter, so I'm all for it. I'm going to need to see how things shake out in order to really determine if that type of build will be great. But I am optimistic that people will find a way to make it work. So then you got the Witch stuff. None of which is great for grapplers, so we're going to kind of skip through it. You can get some upgrades to your armaments from like Witch, but that's kind of it. There are some new patrons and stuff that are interesting, but I don't think it really benefits the frontline supporty playstyle as much. But there are some interesting things to make it allies more bulky and stuff, but that's something to look for in a different video, because this one is still focused on the grapple melee playstyle. And what really surprised me was how good the Zoobard was. It has some pretty decent action denial, because you can look at this level 2 feat, single action. You can do a nature or performance check compared to the will DC of each enemy adjacent. And if you have an animal companion, you also compare it to each enemy adjacent to them. So you don't need to necessarily be in the front line, but you can be. Remember, bards get light armor naturally, so it isn't too much of a stretch to say, okay, at level 3 I pick up a general feat, get into some medium armor. That's not unreasonable. Or play human, get some medium armor, and then build them as a wrestler. That is not unreasonable, so I want you to keep that in mind as we're talking about this. It does not have any animal companion feats in itself, so you'd want to go into something like Beastmaster, but there is room for you having the Beast then be a thing that is grappling, that is then tripping, that is then providing the frontline support, as you use other abilities as a bard to then support your entire squad. And you can also, once per day, most recent action to cast Composition spell, you can sustain a summon animal or command an animal companion, which is really strong. This is more action compression in Bard. And action compression is very strong. So in theory, you could Lingering Composition, a composition thing, and then Zoophonic Composition, so you're not even costing that one action. Yeah, this is a once per day ability, but I think it has real like, potency behind it. And then you can, of course, have a 3-action thing to summon an animal and do a composition spell at the same time. This is when summon spells are falling off, but, like, you can still put more bodies on the field, which is good. And then level 18, if you get your spell cancelled, you can have your animal try to hit them to cancel their cancel, which is neat. I really think a lot of the power of this one is in the early, like, these 2 feats, and also lets you talk to animals like other level 1 benefits, but I think that the Zoo Bard actually has a lot of sauce to it if you want to have an animal companion, and I do think that animal companion grapplers did get better because Beastmaster got buffed. I do not know why they decided to buff Beastmaster, but hey, I'm just the messenger. They gave bears a different athletic rush. We can now do a 1-action focus spell to give a status bonus to athletics checks to an animal companion. So now when your animal companion is going and tripping and grappling, it's doing that at +1, +2, +3. So you have like an actual player character math type thing doing its trips, doing its grapples, as you as a bard are providing other support and action compression. So I think this is a very real build for bard. Like going Beastmaster plus Zoo Bard and going wild with it. I think there's a lot here that is powerful. And I think that is probably going to be the, in terms of optimization, the strongest thing to come out of this book. Will be Spirit of the Beast plus Zoo Bard. I think those are going to be the 2 most powerful things that come out of this book. And that is minor spoilers for this video, but I do think this ability right here is really good. It also has, of course, like other abilities that are interesting. Like they have a lot of stuff that specializes per animal companion. None of it seemed that exciting to me personally, but if you have a specific animal companion, they will have a feat to make that animal companion better. I don't know what animal companion you have, and you can read through it yourself and review it. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't pick, really, because I think it's all kind of, if I have free archetype, it's good. If I don't have free archetype, I'm probably not picking it, and they're all kind of that tier. Yeah. You can have Bestial Protection give, like, incidental frightens as no action cost. You can have this one give any animal companion a sneak attack. It's neat. Then, of course, all these other things for different types of animal companions. You can pause screen to read, wait for it to come up on Archives of Nethys. It's already up on Path Builder, so you can read it there too. And, again, similar abilities for each companion. And then they also have things for, if you have a neat Jaws attack, here is, if you already have a creature grabbed or restrained, you can have it deal some piercing damage automatically, which is nice. I'm not going to say it's incredible, but it's nice. And Sweeping Tail can let them push people back and deal some damage and blah, blah, blah. There's interesting stuff here. And again, I'm not going to go too much into this, but you can get some like monster abilities like this Vicious Rend thing here. It's resembling a monster ability. But again, I think that the strongest thing to be doing with animal companions comes back here. Spirit of the Beast, boost athletics, go in for those grapples and trips, because your animal companions are not going to be doing the damage to player character no matter what. So, I say, just go ahead and rely on those athletics maneuvers. And you can also give a winged animal companion that usually flies a range attack. Neat. This is not a range increment. It just says range, which means it falls off after 30 feet and just doesn't work. If it was range increment, this ability would be much, much stronger. But, hey, a range attack for a flying companion that can push somebody 5 feet. That's not bad. Yeah, you can give them, like, the evasion, whatever stuff, the master effect for a lot of saving throws where you can get critical success on success, which, fine. 18 feet. And you can get action combination things for having a bunch of animal companions and yourself all beat somebody to death. Which, sure. Like, this is all cool stuff. Again, I think the strongest thing that they gave the archetype is the level 4 feed. I think that is going to be one of the more powerful things available. Okay, Clawdancer. So the thing about Clawdancer is it is actually a stance dance archetype. I was hoping that they'd put a stance dance thing in the game for a while now, because I think that the playstyle of changing out what your attacks do depending on situation is really cool and really under-tapped design space. I'm pretty happy that this exists. I'm not sure the power level's there, though. I'm going to say it that way. Because you can see Claw Stance, Talon Stance, they each give you different unarmed strikes to make with your claws. These are not, like, quite up to massive high uber damage type deals, but with the Claw Stance and the Talon Stance, you have a D8 big attack or a D6 agile attack, which are the two types of unarmed strikes you're really going to be looking for in an unarmed build, which is interesting. It then also has abilities that feature a grapple playstyle and the grapple trait on the Claw Stance. Interesting. It very much resembles Clinch Strike, but comes in at an earlier level, so it's probably going to be good in the same situations Clinch Strike is good, which is, I am a build that naturally tries to grapple people. Here is my thing to do that makes that better. So I could see Clawdancer being very good for a class like Fighter, that naturally has combat grab, and then can use this to get further things to punish people for getting grabbed. So I could see this being great for them. It gives them their extra unarmed strike damage, which is usually the thing that's holding back unarmed fighter builds. So I think there's sauce there. I will mention, Clinch Strike does not specify which unarmed strike you can make. Claw Snag only works if you're in the Claw Stance, so I assume there's going to be some awkwardness of trying to get between the stances fast enough, and some action inefficiency there. And if you are in Wrestler proper, you could get Combat Grab to get that grab condition easier. So, again, power level I'm not convinced by, but I like the idea. Dashing Pounce, again, we have this identity of, we have a movement option that then lets you do damage after the fact in the archetype, which is neat. You can, in the Talon Stance, punish enemies for flanking you, which is really cool. You can go ahead and tumble through plus grapple. You can do a lot of very interesting maneuvers. I'm going to just start clicking through. This one lets you apply Enfeebled, which is a very strong status condition. And yeah. Note this requires both attacks to hit, and they need to make a fort save against class DC, which is... I'm not going to say that's likely to happen. Like, really ever, but it's a thing that exists. You can take it. Again, unconvinced by power level, but I like the ideas. And you do see Flourish on reactions, which actually does function. Flourish on a reaction simply means you can only do one Flourish action per round. So this would then be your Flourish action of the round, which means it has some anti-synergy with the Wheeling Grab and some other abilities, but I like Flourish abilities in general, because I think that every build should have one Flourish action they like using, because it's like cheating an extra action in, and cheating in extra actions is very good in this game. Other things here, at level 12 you get a feat that actually helps you swap between your stances, but I'm not convinced that's going to be great. I think most people are just going to build for either Claw or for Talon. I kind of wish there is a better way to do both. But yeah, you can go ahead and read these. You can see level 16 feat for 3 actions when you're in either. You can Claw or Talent Strike, and then do a bunch of stabs, and it's like, sure. Multi-attack penalty increasing as normal means I sleep. Gotta be honest. But, again, I like the ideas, not sure the power level's there. Yeah. if you have an ancestry that's going to give you a special unarmed strike, like a claw, which you need for the prerequisites for this, why won't you just upgrade that through the Ancestries ways, and then just take Wrestler for utility? Like, that's my critique of it, is I don't think it's optimal, and I can't really come up with a scenario where I'd rather do this than just play a Wrestler, which is unfortunate. And then there's the Ostilli Host, which is a very anti-magic type thing. You can see some examples of its abilities here. It's all very much, I'm gonna beat magical enemies, which is interesting, but also not great if you're doing an unarmed grappler type thing unless it's campaign specific. This is more based on, ooh, we're gonna face a lot of weird magical enemies. So if I was in a game like Gatewalkers, this is something that I'd actually look at because the adventure path has a lot of theming around weird magic, so having resistance against magical effects might be good. But I don't think it's that great on average. Swarmkeeper. So this one is pretty simple in the dedication. You can see that it lets you do a Swarm 4th action, which, and you can use the Bite and Sting action, which are Swarms out. It's a lot of text, is what I'm getting at. It's a lot of text, so I'm just going to do my best to summarize it here. A lot of this is just describing how exactly a swarm works. And then you can swarm out of the body, and then you can have it go ahead and deal some basic damage, and that's the dedication feat itself. And then the other feats in the archetype then give you flourish things, so you don't just like keep on doing a bunch of these utility things every round, that then apply some pretty nasty abilities. Like, this one can immobilize until they escape. This one has them do fortitude saves or be dazzled. And then, so like, this target's reflex, this target's fortitude. There's some sauce here. Like, it's a matter of how much you value these abilities. But there are a lot of really interesting things in here. So, like, Second is a super potent ability. You can have the Swarm provide cover for you and your allies. If you want to play a swarm of bees, here are the rules for it. It's neat. I don't know if I'm going to play one of these, but I definitely think it has a lot of power, particularly if your GM likes to use a bunch of smaller creatures, because then you can do area abilities at will, which is something we really haven't seen before. We saw a little bit of it in Kineticist, but this is not something we usually see in Pathfinder 2. And I'm pretty excited by it. I'm not sure in terms of third action it's better than a traditional animal companion that then grapples and trips and does all of its other stuff, but it's interesting. And it might be like on par with traditional animal companions in terms of the builds that want to use it. Because now it's, if you do not have flourish actions a whole bunch, Swarmkeeper might just be like how you want to fill out your action economy. And then there's the frog one, which basically if you have a long tongue, you can do this. And you can have a reach, grapple, unarmed strike for a D4 bludgeoning. No agile trait, which means the frog Barbarian can now use their tongue for like actual good attack with their rage. I think this archetype is very undertuned. I can only think of it being useful for Frog Barbarians, and that's kind of it, which is unfortunate. Lassoing Lash is a level 4 feat that if you make an athletics check against somebody, you try and pull them towards you. It's like reverse shove, and shove is already situational, and the only uses I think of for shove is pushing somebody away into like off a cliff type deal. So I'm not super excited by stuff like Lassoing Lash, which I think is even more situational. Because if I have line of sight to somebody and the tile in between us is like available and it's just normal reach, so they're within like one tile away, why am I not just stepping forward one tile to get into melee with them if I wanted that? But I have a reach attack, so why would I use this? And Powerful Lash, I'm confused by this action symbol here, because its description just says, The damage die of your lash increases to 1d6 and it gains sweep, which, sure, but why is it in action? Is this a stance I enter? Is this meant to be a you make a strike where the damage increases? I don't know. I don't understand why this is an action symbol. I think the most likely case is this is meant to be a meta strike, and in which case it's really bad, or it's meant to be a passive, in which case it makes the tongue attack usable. So, I don't know. And then, levered swing's actually really interesting. It lets you, like, grab onto a ledge with your tongue or, like, a branch or something, swing around with it, and effectively fly somewhere, which is cool. It seems really niche, especially for a level 8 feat. And then Slingshot Maneuver actually seems useful, but again, it's a level 10 feat. I think this would be fine at level 6. I think this archetype is pretty weak overall. And I think that's really shown in Spinning Release, because it's a 3-action activity that requires you to already have a creature grabbed or restrained, that then only really does stuff on a failure. It's a level 14 feat. At this point, the text here could be win the encounter and it would still be bad. I think it's like that bad. And it just confuses them until the end of their next turn. Which is, it's not even a full stun for a turn. You're spending your full turn to potentially stun them when they're already grabbed, therefore off guard. Like, just play Wrestler. I cannot come up with a scenario where this archetype is good. The only time I can really see this archetype being played is if everybody in the game is like, hey, what if we played as a bunch of frogs? And everybody got this as their free archetype and it was mandated to be this archetype. But then I don't think there's enough mechanical complexity for it to be like good for that style of game. And that's unfortunate. I think that this needs like a lot of things to be one fewer action, or at the upper levels, and the lower levels need just like a general power bump. Because I think this was designed very safe. Because they didn't want frog characters to become the meta, which I get that, but I don't know. I'm not super thrilled about this one. Whirling Clobber is legitimately a pretty damn good ability though. Everybody within your tongue reach takes damage, then you hit the guy that you have grabbed at the end of it. It's a more situational whirling throw that potentially has an upside, and if this feat back here is actually a passive, like what I think it should be, it has synergy with this, and that's cool. But cool doesn't mean good, and that's the issue. So, let's go on to the Werecreatures. Just to this, you get toughness and a small weakness to silver. You're forced to change shape every full moon. You can be in a hybrid form, a full human form, or a pure animal form. Here are the move speeds of all the different animals. And moving on. You can get plus 10 move speed from a level 4 feat. You can get rid of the silver weakness, which, fine, that was never going to matter in the first place. You can get extra senses. Low light vision and imprecise scent. So if you're a humanoid, or pure human, that's really strong. Oh, and I should mention, this is an untyped speed bonus. So if you are a Centaur with the move speed thing that is also a half-elf, that also, you can get some really fast characters going. It stacks with Monk, it stacks with all that stuff. Somebody on Reddit is going to make some build that is like, look at me, I can have 100 speed per action, and we say, and what do you do after you are in position? In which case we just hear crickets. I legitimately think that this plus 10 move speed is like the reason to take this archetype. It gives you toughness for free at level 2, then get move speed at level 4. As well as some pretty good unarmed strikes. I'm pretty happy with that already. Bear Hug is strictly worse combat grab in 4 ways. Let's count them. Higher level feat requirement. Required the previous action to be a specific strike. Requires that strike to be successful. Costs more actions. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to call it unplayable, though, because Combat Grab is just so disgustingly good that there's a lot of room to be a worse Combat Grab, but still pretty good. I just think that this one is pretty near unplayable, though. I would not pick it. Death Roll, though. Death Roll is insane. You can be in the crocodile or hybrid shape, grab a creature, and then you make a Jaws strike, and knocks them prone. You don't release the grab unless you miss. That makes it a better suplex, in a lot of cases. So, that's pretty interesting. I can see the progression being, you're in Wrestler, you go for the combat grab and get suplex from the level 4 feast when you have free archetype. Then at level 6, go into the Werecreature and get the move speed. And then you can gain access to a lot of the upper level, both Wrestler and Werewolf stuff. And then you can make a really interesting, tankier version of a character that has unarmed strikes, that can be any ancestry. I think there's a lot of sauce here. Again, a thing to punish enemies for flanking you, which is cool. And then a lot of their higher level feats I think are strong, but have notable drawbacks. So if you want to see what I mean, pause the screen and see where all the drawbacks are that maybe these feats didn't need. I will mention, Pharaoh Mending, probably really strong. But it requires you'd want to shapeshift mid-fight, which is going to be like 2-action activity to basically do a weaker lay on hands on self, which, I'm unconvinced, but it's a thing. It exists. Yeah. Boop. Then there's Wild Mimic, which in its dedication itself, you can get a special lore skill that lets you recall knowledge about any special ability a creature has, and then get a bonus to saving throws against the next attack or ability that the subject of the recall knowledge targets you with. This is something I'm pretty annoyed by, but +1 circumstance bonus to your saving throws against the next attack. Attacks don't target saving throws, unless you are specifically using Shadow Signet with attack roll spells, which I cannot think of a single monster creature that has an ability like that, so I'm going to assume they meant to have this be a +1 against armor class or saving throws against the next attack or ability. I'm going to assume that's what they meant here, but that's not what the ability actually reads, so... but then the rest of the feats are I Copy You, where you just get a bunch of, monster abilities that you can throw onto your character. So you can get access to Trample. You can get access to a Petrifying Gaze. You get access to Ferocity. You get access to Rend, and all these very interesting monster abilities. So if you want to play this Wild Huntsman type character that mimics the abilities of the creatures of the wild, you can very well do that now, which is sweet, and I love that. I think the power level is actually there with a lot of these feats, because monster abilities are designed to be really strong. And monster abilities are very varied, and you get a good variety of them, so I really like the Wild Mimic. A Winged Warrior is for all your winged characters. I remember this one being pretty decent when I read it. It requires you to have permanent wings somehow, and lets you leap further and get some fly speed faster if you have a fly speed. You can then slap people with wings, which is fine. It's like Fist Strike. You can, if you cast an air electricity spell, use that to then have you leap around or fly around a little bit, which is cool. You can wing bounce, just leap and trip. Action combinations, pretty decent. You can try and dazzle people if you're in Bright Light, which is pretty frequent in most games of Pathfinder 2e when you're out in the wilds or anywhere. Bright Light is not uncommon. Once per hour, you can also have some area damage in a 15-foot emanation, which is, not bad. This is pretty under 2 in terms of like the actual damage output compared to actual Fireball and actual max rank spells, but it is area damage as a single feat that this archetype's already giving you some pretty interesting stuff. So, and then its upper level feats are also not that bad. So like the entire archetype is pretty good if you want to play a character that focuses on their wings. And I do want to mention there's the Pluck from the Flat Sky Cratering Drop type deal. Which lets you basically try to hit a flying creature out of the sky, and then Cratering Drop has you fly them into the ground. It's basically the ultimate aerial pile driver. Which, I don't know. This one has a lot of neat stuff in it. I really like it. And then I looked through for some neat crowd control spells from, like, general spells. Alright, so after recording my initial segment, I realized I didn't actually talk about Albatross Curse, which a lot of people were interested in. So I'm going to insert it here at the start of the spell section. Basically, the reason to do this spell is you one creature within 30 feet, all your allies then have +1 circumstance bonus to hit that creature. So this stacks with Bless, stacks with Off Guard, stacks with all the stuff you want to stack with. And they can spend an action to strike and kill the Albatross, which, fine. They then make a saving throw where they can then become stupefied, which really will not matter for a more martially creature. And a spellcaster creature is likely to succeed, critical succeed, so... But the failure duration says that their next will save, basically in that fight, because it goes away after the next will save. The worst result in the next will save is pretty good, because there are a lot of will save spells that do quite a bit off of one saving throw. So you don't want to like have them kill the Albatross and then go for Wisdom save cantrip. No, 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 no. You want that to happen, then you go for like a big slotted spell, just try and pop them. And 2 actions, give all your allies +1 hit something. Pretty good. Like, I'm not convinced this will become a tier 1 spell. Solid tier 2 though. I don't think it's overpowered, because that seems to be like a debate that's happening. That's it. Back to the normal video. Also, we're not going back yet. As a follow-up to the follow-up, it doesn't need to actually attack the bird, so it can spend an action. It doesn't need to, and if it knows that this is a bird of good fortune, it likely will have a bad effect. It might choose to just leave the bird around. So it's probably just the +1 to hit, and this thing is an option for the creature to try and end your effect early, which I think that this is just purely making the spell worse, because it is now giving the opponent an option for an out. Even if this was really bad, giving the opponent a choice is usually worse, even if it gives them another opportunity to mess up. Against like an intelligent foe, against an unintelligent foe like an animal, this might be even better, but I don't think that it's actually absurdly potent, like a lot of people have been saying. It's a +1 to hit a creature, which is great. I just don't think it's all that and then more, which is what some people are saying. Croak Voice was pretty interesting as something to disable speech, and therefore a lot of spells that require speech, as this is a fort save, which tends to be pretty weak on most NPC casters. So you can definitely get something done with this one. You can have Sacred Beasts, which I'm pointing out here because it is a rank 1 damage spell that is in Divine and has a reflex save. We did it! Divine has a reflex save spell again! Woohoo! Divine has really poor reflex saves, and I think a lot of the rank 1 damage spells aren't great. But like 5-foot burst, 30-foot range, like this isn't bad for a rank 1 area damage spell. I think the rank 1 damage spells are generally still pretty bad, but this is I probably one of the better ones of the list, and it's in Divine. So haha, Divine doesn't have bad damage. In terms of items, there really weren't that many that were great for the grappling playstyle, but I want to highlight just like a few. Starting with Grafts. So Grafts are basically just extra things you add on to your physical body. extra parts, if you will. And so I want to mention that you can put extra unarmed strikes onto any character by just spending some gold. These will scale with hand wraps and all that kind of stuff. There are some other items that are good, like there are a lot of armors that give bonuses to athletics, or otherwise have some funny throw abilities that rely on athletics, but I don't think these are really exceptional and must picks for any wrestler. There are interesting special hand wraps. I will mention a rules concern I have. Maybe the comments can read through this for me, but this is a special magic item, but hand wraps already had like special magic item rules that don't exactly interface with weapon rules. And this is saying you can have weapon runes etched on them similar to hand wraps mighty blows. So I'm not sure if this is just extra text on a normal hand wraps or whatever. I think that the intention is this takes up all your property runes, like it would for unique magical weapons. But this is the first time we've seen an item like this, so I'm not quite sure where that fits in. It gives all your unarmed strikes versatile P, so you can actually do piercing stuff with them and have enemies have holes in them so you can actually use poisons and stuff. But you still can't apply poisons to unarmed strikes because it's only applied to weapons and whole thing, but not going to worry about it. And that's the review of Howl of the Wild. So, generally, my overall thoughts are, the book has a lot of interesting stuff in it. A lot of it I think is kind of undertuned, like about half of it. And then half of it I think are great additions to the game as they are written. I only went over the stuff for the grappler playstyle because there is a good amount of that in this book. But I also had to skip and cut out a lot of other stuff that is interesting. If you are playing a naturalist character that wants to do a lot of these interesting nature-based things, this is a great source book for that type of thing. And I just reviewed the mechanics here. Let me know if you want to see more book reviews like this in the future. I don't quite know what I want to do when new book releases happen, so this is a new format for me. Give me feedback in the comments down below. Subscribe, join the Discord. You know what to do. End card should be coming up on screen now. Screen's fading to black. And I'll catch you all in the next one.